What if I told you that, like, a minor catering disaster at an ancient Middle Eastern wedding secretly contained the exact mathematical timeline of human history?
I mean, it sounds exactly like the premise of a crazy religious conspiracy thriller, right?
Right.
But when you actually unpack the cultural context
Hmm.
and then the prophetic layers underneath that specific event, the implications are just staggering.
Yeah, and that is the incredibly ambitious framework we are stepping into today. So, welcome to the deep dive. We've got a fascinating one for you.
Really do.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into a really profoundly layered sermon by Pastor Ivor Myers. It's titled The Best Wine Saved for Last.
And most of us probably know the basic story,
Oh, sure. Jesus is at a wedding in the village of Cana. They run out of wine, and he turns water into wine. It's classic.
Exactly. And we usually treat it like this nice, heartwarming magic trick, just to save the bride and groom from
All
embarrassment.
right, just a nice favor.
But the notes we have today suggest this is actually a master key. Like, this one miracle is a blueprint.
A blueprint for what, exactly?
It basically decodes the transition from the old covenant to the new covenant,
Hmm.
and it maps out these massive historical time prophecies.
Wow.
And ultimately, it provides a very practical, step-by-step guide for keeping your own personal spiritual life pure today.
So let's set the stage emotionally and historically for you guys listening. Jesus has just emerged from 40 intensely grueling days of temptation in the wilderness.
Yeah, 40 days. He was baptized by John the Baptist. He faced down the devil in the desert. And now he just emerges and attends a wedding in Cana of Galilee.
Right, his mother is there, his new disciples are there, and then a crisis hits. The wine runs out.
And we need to pause right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because for us, for a modern listener, running out of wine at a wedding is like a hiccup.
Yeah, you send a groomsman to the liquor store. It's mildly annoying, but it's not a disaster.
Right. In a modern Western context, it's just a minor logistical failure. But in the ancient Near East, in a deeply honor and shame-based culture,
Oh, it's a huge deal.
a profound social disgrace. A wedding feast wasn't a 4-hour reception with the DJ. It was a multi-day festival.
Right, and the families of the bride and groom were contractually and socially obligated to provide for their guests.
Exactly. Failing to do so would attach a permanent stigma to the family name. It was an absolute humiliation.
So Mary, Jesus' mother, recognizes this impending disaster, and she just points it out to him. She says, simply, they have no wine.
Which prompts a response from Jesus that has honestly always baffled me.
Yeah, he looks at his mother and says, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come.
It feels totally disconnected from the situation, right?
It's almost dismissive. Like, why would he suddenly start talking about his grand, mysterious hour when she's just asking him to help with the beverages?
It seems like a massive non sequitur until you actually analyze how the Gospel of John uses that specific phrase.
Okay, so break that down.
The hour is not a casual expression for Jesus. It's a very specific recurring motif. If you trace the phrase my hour or the hour through the entire book of John,
Like in chapter 7 or chapter 12.
exactly, chapter
Sure.
17 as well, whenever Jesus mentions his hour arriving or not arriving, he's exclusively pointing toward one singular cosmic event.
He's talking about the crucifixion.
Precisely. He's talking about his death, his burial, and his resurrection, the moment the Son of Man is to be glorified on the cross.
So consider the cognitive dissonance here. He is standing at a joyful wedding festival. He's looking at empty water pots, but his mind isn't on the catering at all.
No, his mind is fast-forwarding to Calvary.
That's intense. And I want to focus on those pots for a second because the details really matter here.
They absolutely do.
John specifically points out that these weren't just random containers. There were 6 water pots of stone, and they were used after the manner of the purifying of the Jews.
Right, they were ritual purification pots, and they were empty.
And that emptiness is really the central metaphor of this entire first section of Pastor Myers' analysis, right?
It is. Prophetically and symbolically, those empty stone pots represent the Old Covenant.
Okay, unpack that for us.
By the time Jesus arrives on the scene, the Old Covenant, the entire system of animal sacrifices, the rigid rituals, the temple traditions, it had effectively run out of wine.
It was spiritually bankrupt?
Exactly.
Huh.
It could no longer satisfy the deep spiritual thirst of humanity. The people are thirsty, they are longing for genuine connection with God, and the religious system just has absolutely nothing left to offer them.
It's just empty stone.
Just empty stone pots.
Okay, I see where this is going. Jesus goes ahead and performs the miracle anyway. He fills those stone pots with water, and it becomes wine.
Right.
But if the empty pots represent the exhausted old covenant, and his mind is secretly on the cross, then the wine he creates has to be a symbol too.
It is the ultimate symbol. The turning of water into wine at Cana was merely a tiny, localized taste of a much greater miracle that was coming.
It's like a teaser trailer for a movie.
That's a great way to put it.
The miracle at Cana is just this 2-minute preview showing you the director's style. But the main feature, the actual event he is pointing toward, doesn't premiere until years later.
At the Last Supper and the cross?
Right. Because when we fast forward to the Last Supper, Jesus literally holds up a cup of wine and says, "This cup is the New Testament in my blood, which is shed for you." He explicitly defines the wine.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. The true miracle isn't turning water into a pleasant beverage to save a family from social embarrassment.
No, the true miracle is Jesus shedding his own blood.
The pure spiritual wine of the new covenant, literally poured out to quench the thirst of dying souls and save humanity from eternal shame.
He is replacing the empty rituals of stone with the living wine of his own sacrifice.
Exactly.
That makes total sense conceptually, but I really want to bridge the historical gap for you listening, because the people following the Old Covenant weren't just staring at literal empty stone pods.
Right. They had very specific, mandated rituals.
They had the Passover lamb. So if the wine is his blood, how does that Old Testament lamb bridge the gap between the empty pots of the Old Covenant and the overflowing wine of the New Covenant?
Well, to understand that bridge, we have to go all the way back to the book of Exodus, chapter 12.
The first Passover.
Right. The Passover was the defining rescue operation of the Hebrew people. They were slaves in Egypt, and God told them to take a lamb without blemish, sacrifice it, and strike its blood on the doorposts of their houses.
And when the destroying angel swept through Egypt, it would see the blood and pass over that house.
It was a literal blood covering that saved them from death.
But that entire Old Covenant system was always meant to be a shadow, wasn't it?
Exactly. It was a physical rehearsal pointing forward to a spiritual reality. That is why, centuries later, when John the Baptist is standing in the Jordan River and sees Jesus walking toward him.
For the very first time.
Right. He doesn't say, "Behold the great moral philosopher," or "Behold the new king." He points a finger at Jesus and declares, "Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world."
Man, that must have been a shocking statement to a Jewish audience.
Oh, absolutely jarring.
He's taking their most sacred ancient rescue ritual and mapping it directly onto this carpenter from Nazareth.
He is radically redefining their entire theology in one sentence. John is stating unequivocally that the spotless lamb of the Old Covenant Passover was just a signpost.
It was always pointing directly to Jesus.
Yes. And then Jesus completes the metaphor by saying that his blood is the pure wine of the new covenant.
So the Passover lamb, the empty stone purification pots, the water turning to wine, these aren't disconnected stories at all.
Not even a little bit.
They are all converging on the exact same coordinate in history. They are all pointing to the cross, where Jesus will finally offer the true wine to satisfy the spiritual thirst of humanity.
And the wild part is that profound convergence is entirely missed by almost everyone at the wedding.
Right. They're just happy they have drinks.
Except perhaps for the way it manifests in the physical reality of the wine itself. Because the wine Jesus makes isn't just adequate, it's extraordinary.
Which brings us to my favorite character in this whole narrative.
The governor of the feast.
Yes. Basically, the ancient equivalent of a master of ceremonies, or like a wedding planner. The servants draw this newly created wine from the stone pots and take it to him.
And he takes a sip, and he is absolutely floored.
He has no idea where it came from, but he immediately pulls the bridegroom aside and gives him a very specific compliment.
Let's read exactly what he says.
He says, "Every man at the beginning sets forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse, that thou hast kept the good wine until now."
Now, on the surface, it's just a professional observation about catering tactics.
Yeah, usually you serve the expensive vintage first when everyone's palate is sharp and bring out the cheap stuff later when people won't notice the difference.
Right. But Meyer's analysis reveals that this offhand compliment is actually an accidental, monumental prophecy.
Wait, really?
Yes. The wedding planner's words perfectly, sequentially describe the grand historical timeline of the Christian gospel.
Okay, an accidental prophecy from a wedding planner. I am going to need you to break that down. How does a comment about catering map onto historical timelines?
Let's analyze the governor's sequence. He starts by noting that the good wine is set forth At the beginning. Myers connects this statement directly to one of the most famous time prophecies in the Bible,
Which one?
the 70-week prophecy found in Daniel chapter 9, specifically verse 25.
All right, before we just throw out the phrase 70-week prophecy, we need to explain the math here for you listening.
Good idea.
Because 70 weeks is only about a year and a half. Obviously, we aren't talking about a literal 490 days.
You're right to catch that. In biblical apocalyptic prophecy, particularly in books like Daniel and Revelation, there is a well-established hermeneutic called the day-year principle.
Where do we find that rule?
You can find the key to this in places like Ezekiel 4.6 and Numbers 14.34, where God explicitly says, I have appointed thee each day for a year.
Okay, so when Daniel says 70 weeks, we multiply 70 by 7 days in a week, which gives us 490 prophetic days. And applying that day-year principle, that means we are actually looking at a literal historical period of 490 years.
Exactly. The 70-week prophecy was a 490-year countdown clock given to the Jewish people, predicting the exact arrival of the Messiah.
So when does the clock start ticking?
The prophecy states that the clock starts ticking from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem.
And historically, do we know when that happened?
We know precisely when that happened. The Persian king Artaxerxes issued that decree in the year 457 BC.
Okay, so if you start at 457 BC and count forward 490 years, where does that land us?
It lands us in the year 34 AD. But the prophecy is brilliantly segmented.
How so?
It says that the Messiah would appear after 69 of those weeks, which is 483 years. If you count 483 years from 457 BC, you land exactly in the year 27 AD.
And what happens in 27 AD?
In 27 AD, Jesus of Nazareth walks into the Jordan River and is baptized by John.
Oh, wow.
The Holy Spirit descends on him, and he officially begins his public ministry as the anointed Messiah.
Right. On schedule.
Exactly. The prophecy also states that in the final week, the last 7 years of that 490-year period, the Messiah would confirm the covenant and be cut off, but not for himself.
So halfway through that final 7-year period, which would be 3.5 years after his baptism.
Jesus is crucified.
Yeah.
In the spring of 31 AD.
That is mathematical precision. So connecting this back to the wedding at Cana, Jesus arriving right on time, being baptized, establishing his ministry, and shedding his blood on the cross, that is him confirming the covenant.
Yes.
That is Jesus bringing out the absolute best, purest, good wine of the gospel right at the beginning of the Christian era.
Absolutely. The early church in the book of Acts of the Apostles, the early martyrs, Paul, Peter, John, they were drinking this pure, unadulterated, original gospel.
They had the good wine.
They had the good wine. It was a theology centered entirely on self-sacrificing love, grace, and the pure character of Christ.
But, and here is where the plot thickens, the governor's observation didn't stop with the good wine. The second half of his sentence is the ominous part.
Right. He says, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse.
So, if the early church had the pure vintage, who spoiled the barrel? Because Jesus certainly isn't in the business of serving toxic wine.
That is the tragic turning point of church history. After the purity of the early apostolic church, the prophetic narrative anticipates a massive corruption.
Did the early church leaders know it was coming?
They did. The Apostle Paul, in Acts 20.29, gives a chilling warning to the believers. He says, for I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Also of your own selves shall men arise, speaking perverse things.
Paul is explicitly warning them that the recipe is going to be tampered with from the inside.
Yes. And Myers links this corruption directly to a second massive timeline, the 1260-year prophecy.
We're doing more math.
A little bit, yeah. This period is mentioned multiple times in Scripture. Sometimes it's called 42 months, sometimes a time, and times and half a time, or 1,260 days.
And using that same day-year principle, it represents a brutal 1,260 years period of historical corruption.
Precisely.
Where do we find the details of what actually happens during this period?
You find the clearest description in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. Daniel described a little horn power that would rise up out of the ruins of the Roman Empire.
And what does this power do?
It would do 3 things. It would speak great words against the Most High. It would wear out the saints. And this is the crucial phrase. It would think to change times and laws.
Times and laws.
Right. And Pastor Myers playfully points out the rhyme here. Changing times and laws is functionally the same as changing wine and laws.
So altering the foundational laws and character of God is equated with ruining the pure wine of the gospel. When does this 1,260 years period of bad wine actually happen in history?
Historically, this period begins in the year 538 AD.
What happened then?
This was the year that the decree of Roman Emperor Justinian went into full effect, legally elevating the Bishop of Rome to be the supreme head of all churches, while simultaneously using military force to crush theological opposition, specifically the Ostrogoths. Yeah, it marks a formal, legally codified union of church and state power.
So we aren't talking about a grassroots spiritual movement anymore. We are talking about an empire wielding a cross instead of an eagle standard.
Exactly, and this period stretches for 1,260 years, right through the Dark Ages, ending in 1798 AD, when Napoleon's general, Berthier, marched into Rome and took the Pope captive.
Which effectively broke that specific geopolitical religious monopoly.
Right, and during that massive 1,260-year stretch, a counterfeit covenant was introduced to the world. The notes refer to this as the wine of mystery Babylon, a term pulled straight from the book of Revelation.
Okay, I want to pause here because I want to be very careful to clarify exactly what we mean by Babylon. We have to be responsible here.
Absolutely.
Because we are talking about centuries of history and millions of people. And for you listening, we are reporting impartially on these sources, but we want to make it clear that Meyer's analysis here is not an attack on, the grandmother sitting faithfully in a pew, or an indictment of individual believers just trying to live good lives.
No, not at all. That distinction is paramount. The critique is systemic, not personal.
Right.
It's an analysis of a theology that substituted the pure, self-sacrificing love of Jesus with coercion, state-sponsored violence, inquisitions, and political supremacy.
Got it. And the source text describes this counterfeit wine as utilizing pharmakeia, the Greek root word for pharmacy or sorcery. It literally medicates the mind.
Yes.
That is such a visceral image, medicated religion. It reminds me of being served spiked punch at a party.
That's a really good analogy.
Right. Imagine you go to a gathering and someone hands you a cup of fruit juice. You take a sip thinking you're drinking something healthy, something life-giving. You think, hey, this has the Jesus brand name on the cup. It must be good.
But you don't know it's laced with a hidden intoxicant.
Exactly. And what does an intoxicant do? It alters your perception of reality. It fundamentally changes your brain chemistry.
Right.
You drink this spiked theology, and suddenly you start getting aggressive. You start feeling superior to people who don't believe what you believe. You start excluding the marginalized.
You start worshiping political authority and craving earthly power.
Yeah, thinking you need to legislate your morality onto everyone else by force. And because the cup says Christianity on the side, you don't even realize you are spiritually drunk. You think you are doing God's work, but you are completely intoxicated by the wine of Babylon.
That analogy perfectly captures the danger. The pure wine of Christ's character is non-intoxicating. It leaves the mind incredibly clear, capable of deep empathy, justice, mercy, and rational thought.
Right.
But the counterfeit wine medicates the conscience. It numbs the empathy. It alters your spiritual perception to the point where, as the prophet Isaiah warned, you begin to call evil good and good evil.
Which perfectly explains why so much of the modern secular world looks at certain historical and current expressions of loud, aggressive faith and completely recoils.
Yeah, they're tasting the bad wine.
They're experiencing the hate, the partisan pride, the exclusivity, and they correctly identify that something is deeply fundamentally toxic about the vintage.
They recognize the contradiction. They know enough about the original Jesus to know he wouldn't be serving this bitter, coercive concoction.
Okay, so let's review the governor's timeline. We have the good wine at the beginning, mathematically confirmed by the 70-week prophecy pointing to Christ and the early church. Then we have that which is worse, the counterfeit wine of the Dark Ages, matching the 12,260-year prophecy of corruption spanning from 528 AD to 1798 AD.
Correct.
If I'm living through history, my ultimate question is, how long is humanity stuck drinking the spiked juice? Like, does the timeline offer a rescue plan?
Yes, the prophetic framework does not leave us in the wilderness. There is a third major timeline, which serves as the rescue operation.
What is it?
The 2300-day prophecy of Daniel 8.13. The text says, "Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed."
More math. I love it. Let's break this one down. Using our day-year principle, we're looking at 2,300 literal years. When does this massive clock start?
It starts at the exact same starting line as the 70-week prophecy, the year 457 BC, with the decree to restore and build Jerusalem.
So the 70 weeks, the 490 years, were basically the first smaller segment cut off from this larger 2,300-year timeline.
Exactly. So if you start at 457 BC and count forward 2,300 full years.
You land in the year 1844.
Yes, 1844. According to Meyer's framework, this year marks a cosmic shift. It is the beginning of the cleansing of the sanctuary.
What does that mean practically?
Prophetically, this parallels the messages of Revelation 14, a global call to return to the original, pure worship of God, to reject the beast in its image.
Oh, I see.
It is the theological process of filtering out the centuries of Babylonian intoxicants, dismantling the false doctrines, and getting back to the good wine that Jesus served at the very beginning.
Now, here is where Pastor Meyer's analysis threw a mathematical Easter egg at me that genuinely made my jaw drop.
Oh, the typology.
Yes. The way he layers the physical, biographical life of Jesus directly over these massive, multi-century historical timelines. I need you to walk us through this typological mapping, because if this is accurate, it is wild.
It really is a stunning piece of biblical pattern recognition. Let's trace it sequentially, laying the life of Christ directly over the timeline of church history we just discussed.
Okay, let's do it.
First, we have the 70-week prophecy, which pointed to the Messiah confirming the covenant and the good wine of the early church. In Jesus' physical life, what event maps to this?
His baptism. He goes into the water, symbolizing death and resurrection, and the Spirit descends. This officially confirms his ministry and the arrival of the good wine.
Right, I follow that. The 70 weeks equals the baptism.
Yes. Second, we have the 1,260 years prophecy, where the pure church is forced to flee into the wilderness to escape the corruption and persecution of the little horn power.
Okay.
In Jesus' physical life, immediately after his baptism, where does the Spirit lead him?
Into the wilderness. For 40 days, to be tempted by the devil and fight intense spiritual battles.
Precisely. The 1,260 years of church wilderness maps perfectly onto Jesus' 40 days of physical wilderness.
Wow.
Now, for the third sequence, what does Jesus do immediately after emerging from the wilderness?
He goes to the wedding at Cana. He addresses the empty pots. He saves the best wine for last.
And then, still within the same continuous narrative in John chapter 2, he travels to Jerusalem, walks into the temple, and what does he do?
He makes a whip of cords, overturns the tables of the money changers, and drives out the corruption. He literally cleanses the physical temple.
Exactly. So this two-part event, the wedding miracle and the cleansing of the temple, typologically maps onto the 2,300-day prophecy, which explicitly ends with the sanctuary being cleansed.
The sequence is identical in both the micro-life of Christ and the macro-history of the church.
Yes. Baptism corresponds to the 70 weeks. Wilderness corresponds to 1,260 years. Cleansing the temple corresponds to the 2,300 days.
Okay, that structural alignment alone is fascinating. It's great literary symmetry. But then the notes add the math to it. And this is the part where I had to literally pull out a calculator to verify it.
Let's look at the dates we just established for the end of those two big prophecies.
Right. The 1,260 years period of wilderness and corruption ends when the Pope is taken captive in the year 1798.
Okay, 1798.
And the 2,300-year period, which promises the cleansing of the sanctuary, ends in the year 1844.
If you do the math, if you subtract 1798 from 1844, you get exactly 46 years, a 46-year gap between the end of the wilderness and the start of the sanctuary cleansing.
Keep that number in mind. Exactly 46 years.
And then you look at the text in John chapter 2. Jesus is standing in the temple courtyard, having just cleansed it by driving out the money changers. The religious leaders are furious.
Naturally.
They surround him and demand, "What sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? What gives you the authority to cleanse this temple?"
And Jesus answers with a famous metaphor, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up."
He's talking about the temple of his body.
Right. But how do the Jewish leaders respond to him in the very next verse?
They scoff at him, and their exact words recorded in John 2:20 are, 46 years was this temple in building, and wilt thou rear it up in 3 days?
46 years.
46 years.
The exact precise mathematical gap between 1798 and 1844 is embedded in the dialogue immediately following the typological temple cleansing.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, my mind is reeling. I have to play the skeptic here for a moment. Are we just finding patterns in the clouds? Is this pareidolia? How is a listener supposed to interpret these structural coincidences? Are we looking at ancient stylized Jewish poetry, or is this supposed to be something more?
From the perspective of Meyer's analysis and the broader theological framework it represents, this is absolutely not a coincidence. It is viewed as a deliberate divine signature.
It is an argument for the supernatural inspiration of the biblical text. The underlying premise is that God is the author of both the micro-narrative, the physical daily life of Jesus Christ, and the macro-narrative of all human history.
So the idea is that the life of Jesus is a fractal.
Yes.
If you zoom in on his 3.5-year ministry, you see the exact same geometric shape as if you zoom out and look at 2,000 years of human history.
Fractal is the perfect word for it. When you see the blueprint fold out with that level of mathematical and structural precision, its purpose isn't just to be a neat parlor trick. It is meant to build immense, unshakable confidence in the listener.
Because history is messy.
Right. When you look at the chaotic history of the church, the wars, the corruption, the false doctrines, the 12 Tower and 60 years of spiritual darkness, it can feel like God lost control of the narrative.
Yeah, like things went off the rails.
But this mathematical mapping is meant to reassure you that history is fundamentally under divine orchestration. It proves that the corruption of the bad wine had a scheduled expiration date, and the best wine was mathematically guaranteed to return.
It means history isn't an accident. And if history isn't an accident, then the physical details of the miracle at Cana probably aren't accidents either.
Definitely not.
Which brings us to the next massive realization in Meyer's sermon. Let's zoom all the way back in from these sweeping centuries down to the physical stone details of the wedding miracle.
Back to the pots.
Right. We have these 6 water pots of stone. Jesus commands the servants to fill them to the brim, and the miraculous wine flows out of them. But Myers doesn't just see 6 stone pots. He sees a human body.
This is where the theology becomes incredibly visceral and deeply moving. We've already established that the wine at Cana points to the blood of the new covenant. Myers takes that literal connection and points out that the wine flowed from 6 specific stone pots. And when you look at the crucifixion of Jesus, his blood, the pure wine of the new covenant, flowed from 6 specific places on his body.
6 places. Let's physically map this out so you listening can visualize the sheer brutality, but also the precision of the cross.
The first wound is his head, pierced and bleeding from the crown of thorns.
Okay.
The second and third wounds are his right hand and his left hand, pierced by the iron nails securing him to the crossbeam.
That's 3.
The fourth wound is his side, pierced by the Roman soldier's spear to confirm his death, which significantly John's gospel notes brought forth both blood and water.
Wow, water and wine.
Exactly. And the fifth and sixth wounds are his right foot and his left foot, pierced by the nail securing him to the upright post.
6 wounds, 6 points of rupture. 6 places from which the saving wine of the covenant flowed to purify humanity.
It's a devastating image. But Myers doesn't stop there. He takes this anatomy of the 6 wounds and he overlays it onto the architecture of the Old Testament tabernacle.
Okay, wait. I want everyone listening to imagine taking a 2D architectural blueprint of the ancient Israelite sanctuary. You have the outer courtyard, the holy place, and the innermost holy place.
Right. Picture that flat layout.
Imagine taking that flat blueprint and folding it on its hinges, standing it up vertically. Myers argues that when you stand the sanctuary up, it creates a perfect 3D anatomical model of a human being. Specifically, it forms the shape of the suffering Christ on the cross.
The spatial alignment is absolutely staggering. Let's walk through the furniture of the sanctuary and map it to the body of Jesus.
Go for it.
If the sanctuary is standing vertically, the top, the head, is the most holy place. The only piece of furniture in that room is the Ark of the Covenant, containing the law of God, covered by the mercy seat where the Shekinah glory dwelt.
This aligns perfectly with the head of Jesus, crowned with thorns, housing the mind of God.
Exactly. Moving down into the holy place, which represents the torso and arms, you have 3 pieces of furniture. On one side, the 7-branch golden candlestick. On the other side, the table of showbread. And in the center, the altar of incense.
And these align with his pierced left and right hands and his beaten body.
Yes. And as we move further down, out of the tent and into the open courtyard.
In the courtyard, you find the bronze laver, a large basin filled with water where the priests were required to wash their hands and feet before entering the holy place.
Which aligns anatomically with the torso and the wound in his side, from which flowed both water and blood.
And finally, the very entrance of the courtyard, at the bottom of our vertical model, you have the massive altar of burnt offering, where the animals were sacrificed and the blood was poured out at the base.
This aligns perfectly with his pierced feet.
I am just sitting here trying to process the weight of that. You're saying that for centuries, Israelite priests were walking through an architectural map of a dying man. The physical layout of their ancient worship wasn't just arbitrary interior design. They weren't just sacrificing lambs. The very furniture of the building, the spatial geometry of the tent, was arranged in the anatomical shape of the crucifixion.
It is a breathtaking realization. It illustrates the core thesis of the entire episode. Everything in the Old Covenant, the empty purification pots, the Passover lamb, the blood on the doorposts, the sanctuary furniture itself, none of it was the final reality.
It's all just a shadow.
It was all just a magnificent divine scaffolding, waiting for the reality of Jesus Christ to step into it and fill it with his life, his blood, his wine.
Okay, this is undeniably profound on a macro-theological level. The fractal math of the prophecies, the historical timelines, the architectural body mapping. It's beautiful.
It really is.
But if I'm the listener right now, I might be hitting a wall. I might be thinking, this is a brilliant theological history lesson, but what does this have to do with me? I have to go to work tomorrow. I have bills to pay. I have relationship issues.
Right. How does it apply today?
We need to transition this from high-level theology to intensely personal daily application. How does this new covenant, this pure wine, actually change the life of the person listening right now?
This is exactly where the sermon pivots, bringing the macrocosmic reality down into the micro-reality of your daily life. The bridge for this application is found in 1 Corinthians 3:16.
What does Paul say there?
The Apostle Paul writes an incredibly confronting question to the believers. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you?
He is telling the individual believer, you are the building now.
Yes. The logic is inescapable. If the ancient physical sanctuary was a template of Christ's body, and Jesus has now declared that you, your physical body and mind, are the temple of the Holy Ghost, then the spiritual rules that govern the ancient sanctuary now apply directly to your personal life.
Which brings us full circle, right back to the wine.
Exactly. Myers points us to a dramatic story in Leviticus chapter 10. Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, who were priests, enter the sanctuary and offer strange fire before the Lord, and they are consumed.
They died right there.
Immediately following this tragedy, God issues a very strict permanent statute for the priesthood. He commands, do not drink wine nor strong drink when you go into the tabernacle of the congregation, lest ye die.
They were absolutely forbidden from bringing intoxicating, mind-altering substances into the holy space. They needed to have clear minds to distinguish between the holy and the unholy.
Precisely. Now, apply that to you listening today. If you are the temple, you have a divine mandate to keep the intoxicating wine out of your holy space.
So practically speaking, in 2026, what is that intoxicating wine? Because it's not just literal alcohol.
No, it's much broader than that.
It's the false doctrines we talked about earlier. It's the wine of Babylon. It's the outrage algorithms on social media that keep you constantly angry at your political opponents.
Yes.
It's the partisan pride, the spiritual arrogance, the hatred disguised as righteousness. I mean, I can't let my mind get drunk on the world's anger and toxicity and still expect my mind to be a hospitable environment for the Spirit of God.
That is the exact practical application. You have to actively guard the gates of your personal temple against the counterfeit wine of Babylon.
But the new covenant doesn't stop with a negative command, does it?
No, it's not just about keeping the bad stuff out. It's about being comprehensively filled and covered by the pure stuff. Just as the blood flowed from Christ's 6 specific wounds, the pure wine of the new covenant must cover your personal temple completely.
Let's walk through that application because it maps beautifully back to the sanctuary wounds we just discussed. It's a full-body spiritual covering.
It is an entire transformation of the person. First, the blood of the new covenant must cover your mind, corresponding to the head or the forehead.
Okay, the mind.
This aligns with the promise in Hebrews 8:10, where God says, I will put my laws into their mind. Your intellectual life, your thoughts, must be washed and transformed by the pure gospel.
That's the first one.
Second, the blood must cover your heart. Ezekiel 36:26 contains the beautiful promise. A new heart also will I give you. I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh. Your desires and emotions must be renewed.
Mind and heart. What's next?
Third, the blood must cover your hands. In Deuteronomy 6:8, God instructs his people to bind his law for a sign upon thine hand. In biblical symbolism, the hands represent your actions, your vocation, your daily deeds.
Like Psalm 24, asking, who shall stand in his holy place, and answering, he that hath clean hands and a pure heart.
Exactly. And finally, the feet.
Fourth, the blood must cover your feet. Romans 8:4 speaks of those who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. The blood must direct your physical path, the places you go, and the trajectory of your daily walk in life.
Okay, I have to step in and push back here on behalf of the listener, because I can hear the objections forming.
Oh, for sure. Someone listening to this right now might say, wait a minute. You just spent the first 40 minutes of this deep dive telling me that the new covenant is all about Jesus' blood. It's the pure wine of grace, a free gift that replaces the empty stone pots of Old Testament ritual.
Right, the free gift.
But now you're telling me I need to perfectly keep God's rules with my mind, my heart, my hands, and my feet. This sounds like a bait and switch. We are right back to earning salvation by keeping a rigorous checklist of behaviors. How do we reconcile this intense focus on personal obedience with the free grace of the new covenant?
It is the most critical question you could ask, and it is the exact theological trap that so many people fall into. Pastor Myers addresses this tension explicitly to ensure you don't walk away with a legalistic burden.
So what's the answer?
He states plainly and categorically, "It is not your walking or the keeping of commandments that saves you. Your clean hands do not buy your salvation. It is the blood, the pure wine of Christ alone that saves you. Period. Full stop."
Okay, so if my obedience doesn't save me, what is the point of the clean hands and feet? What is the role of obedience in the new covenant?
We have to understand the twofold action of the blood. The blood of Christ does two things simultaneously.
What's the first?
First, it justifies you. It saves you from the penalty of sin.
And the second?
Second, it cleanses you. It purifies your personal temple so that you suddenly possess the capacity to actually hold the law of God in your heart and mind.
Ah, I see.
Here's the paradigm shift. Without the blood washing you, your hands and feet are utterly incapable of true, unselfish obedience. Any good deed you do is just self-preservation or pride. But when the pure wine of the new covenant washes your mind and your heart, it changes your fundamental desires.
Oh, I see. Obedience isn't the cause of your salvation, it's the symptom of it.
Exactly. Under the new covenant, obedience is not a terrifying checklist you complete to earn God's favor. It is the natural, joyful, unforced response of a purified temple.
You actually want to do it.
Yes. You delight to do his will. You love your neighbor with your hands, and you walk away from destructive habits with your feet because the intoxicating selfishness has literally been flushed out of your spiritual system by the wine of Christ.
That completely flips the script. The old covenant mentality, the empty stone pot mentality says, I must force my hands and feet to keep the law so that God will love me and give me the blood.
Right.
The new covenant reality says, God freely washes me with his blood, which miraculously transforms my heart's desires, so now my hands and feet actually want to do what is right.
Precisely. And understanding this reviews why the counterfeit wine of Babylon is so incredibly lethal to the soul.
How so?
The false intoxicating wine tells people a half-truth. It says, just verbally claim the name of Jesus, accept his grace, and then it fundamentally does not matter what you do with your hands or your feet.
It's cheap grace. It says you can drink the wine of salvation, but keep your temple full of garbage.
Exactly. It tells you that you can continue to harbor political malice, you can ruthlessly exploit the vulnerable in your business practices, you can destroy people with your words on the internet, and as long as you occasionally sing a worship song, you are perfectly fine.
Wow.
Myers identifies this as the ultimate spiritual sorcery. It medicates your conscience so thoroughly that you don't even realize your temple is completely defiled. It gives millions of people a false assurance of salvation, while their daily character looks absolutely nothing like the character of the Lamb of God.
And that profound disconnect brings us to the climax of this entire analysis and the urgent call to action for you listening today. Because we aren't practicing this faith in a vacuum, the world is watching.
The world is absolutely watching, and they are largely disgusted by what they see.
And can you blame them? The secular world is looking at the massive institutional water pots of modern counterfeit Christianity, and they are realizing that those pots are either completely empty of empathy, or worse, the wine inside them is toxic.
Myers makes this point with incredible clarity. You don't need a theology degree to spot a counterfeit.
No, you really don't.
Even unbelievers, people who have never set foot in a church, have a baseline cultural understanding of who Jesus of Nazareth was. They look at the loud, hateful, power-hungry, politically coercive versions of Christianity dominating the airwaves, and they say, wait a minute.
I don't read the Bible, but I'm pretty sure Jesus was the guy who taught you to love your enemies, turn the other cheek, and care for the poor and marginalized.
Right, so how on earth are you serving me this aggressive cup of anger, exclusion, and nationalism and daring to call it Jesus. Something is severely wrong with your barrels.
People are so deeply thirsty for genuine connection, for real spiritual meaning, but they are recognizing that the spiked juice being offered by much of modern religion is just giving them a spiritual hangover.
It doesn't heal the trauma. It exacerbates it. It's
Yeah.
exhausting, it's flavorless, and it fundamentally fails to heal the human soul.
And this cultural crisis is exactly why we must return to the final detail of the story in John chapter 2. When the water was transformed into the best wine, the governor of the feast tasted it and was amazed. But John adds a parenthetical detail that is easy to miss. He writes that the governor knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew.
The servants knew.
The people doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes knew exactly where the pure wine came from.
And Meyer's ultimate appeal is that God is desperately calling for servants today. The divine project needs people who understand the true, original, non-intoxicating gospel of self-sacrificing love and character.
People whose minds, hearts, hands, and feet have been washed.
Yes. God is looking for individuals whose temples have been genuinely washed by the pure blood of the new covenant. He is calling those specific servants to draw that pure wine and serve it to a thirsty, deeply disillusioned world.
I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now, because after exploring centuries of prophecy and deep theology, this is where the rubber meets the road in your actual life. It is time to ruthlessly evaluate your own spiritual diet.
Ask yourself honestly.
Have you been drinking the spiked, exhausting wine of modern cultural anger, disguised as righteous faith? Have you allowed the intoxicating theology of Babylon to medicate your mind into believing that hatred, outrage, or political supremacy is somehow holy?
It's a tough question, but crucial.
Or perhaps you are on the other side of this. Perhaps you are holding the bucket of the true, pure wine. You know the beauty of the original gospel. You know the unforced rhythms of grace. But you are hesitating to serve it.
Are you standing in the shadows with the cure?
While the governors around you, your exhausted friends, your cynical coworkers, your broken family members are desperate for the real thing. They are dying of spiritual thirst because all they've ever been offered by religion is the bitter, counterfeit wine.
The appeal here is urgent and twofold. If you realize today that you have been drinking the bad wine, put down the cup. Ask the divine to cleanse your temple and send you his true servant. And if you are a servant who knows the truth, it is incumbent upon you to draw the wine and serve it boldly. Because when the genuine in heart, even the most cynical critics of modern religion, finally taste the pure, unadulterated character of Christ in your life, they will recognize it.
They will experience the profound relief of grace.
And they will say, just like the governor at Cana, you have saved the best wine for last.
We have covered massive sweeping ground today. We started by looking at ancient, empty stone pots sitting in the courtyard of a Middle Eastern wedding. We traced how those pots opened up into the sweeping mathematical timelines of Daniel.
The 490-year prophecy validating the pure early gospel.
The 12,260-year wilderness of counterfeit wine.
And the 2,300-day promise of a cleansed, restored sanctuary.
We folded an architectural blueprint of the ancient tabernacle to reveal the precise anatomical wounds of the crucifixion. And finally, we landed right inside the personal sanctuary of your own mind, heart, hands, and feet. It's been an incredible journey.
It is a breathtaking synthesis of Scripture. It demonstrates how every single detail in the text, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, is part of a unified, divine architecture designed specifically to save humanity.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Pastor Meyer's remarkable insights, I want to hand it over to you for one final thought. What is the ultimate takeaway you listening should be mulling over as you go about your week?
I want to leave you with a thought that builds on the very mechanics of the miracle we've discussed today. Think back to that moment at Cana, when Jesus decided to perform this monumental act, when he decided to make the best wine the world had ever tasted. He didn't just snap his fingers and conjure it out of thin air.
No, he didn't.
He could have, but he didn't. He required the servants to bring him ordinary water first. He used the mundane, everyday water from the purification pots as his raw material. So what if the most mundane, ordinary water of your everyday life, your repetitive daily routines, your casual interactions at the grocery store, the patient way you speak to your kids when you're tired, the integrity with which you answer tedious work emails. What if that ordinary water is the exact raw material the divine is waiting for?
That's a beautiful thought.
What if God is waiting for you to simply yield the basic, unglamorous water of your daily life to Him so that He can miraculously transform it into the best wine to quench someone else's spiritual thirst? The miracle happens in the ordinary pots, but only when they are yielded to Him. So as you walk through your week, ask yourself, what are you filling your pots with today?
Are you ready for the ordinary to be transformed? Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive. Keep questioning, keep guarding your temple, keep seeking the pure wine, and most importantly, keep diving deep. Until next time.